we still believe that the Astrazeneca vaccine is effective even in places where you have a large proportion of cases which could be attributed to the B1351 variant or the South African variant. But I want to reiterate that there is no evidence of large-scale presence of this variant in the Philippines.
487,000 doses of AstraZeneca's vaccines via the Covax Facility finally arrived in the country. The Immunization Advisory Group has yet to finalize how the shots will be distributed, but authorities are looking at using it for the elderly and for health workers.
And as questions abound over its efficacy against the South African variant, the World Health Organization stresses it can still be effective in areas with known cases of the B1351 variant. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. There's a new vaccine in town. COVID-19 shots of the British-Swedish brand AstraZeneca are here in the country.
This is now the second COVID vaccine brand to formally arrive in the Philippines. Let's go now to Maricel Halili reporting to us via phone live from Pasay. Maricel, did the arrival of AstraZeneca go smoothly as planned? What can we expect after the arrival?
Hi, Robbie and Gretchen. Like what you've said, about 487,000 doses of AstraZeneca have already arrived around 7:10 this evening at NAIA Terminal 3. So according to a presidential spokesperson, Harry Roque, those vaccines will be towed to Villamor Air Base for a simple ceremony to be led by President Rodrigo Duterte.
Coming from 10 kilometers away in Belgium, more than 480,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccines have finally landed in the country tonight. A commercial flight to NAIA Terminal 3 carried the shipment. The arrival of AstraZeneca vaccines had been delayed a few days due to supply limitations. From the original 500,000 plus doses, the current batch had also been reduced due to cargo limitations. Palace says AstraZeneca's rollout has no exact date yet. The IATF has yet to approve rollout protocols drafted by the Technical Advisory Group. What's sure is that health workers will get first dibs.
Ang alam ko lang po, lahat po yan ay ilalaan muna natin para sa mga medical frontliners. So, if we are to follow the protocols established for Sinovac, binigay muna po sa mga COVID referral hospitals bago binigay sa other DOH hospitals.
Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles says they are looking into using it for elderly medical personnel. Sinovac jabs, which were administered to healthcare workers this week, were limited to those aged 18 to 59 years old.
I-consult namin with the NITAG. No? There has been discussions about, gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, the possibility of using AstraZeneca again for the frontline and medical workers natin na senior citizens. We will refer this to the NITAG and hopefully we'll get their recommendations very soon, especially since forthcoming na, no? Mamayang gabi na darating AstraZeneca, and we'd like to immediately roll out.
OCTA Research says the vaccination of AstraZeneca does not guarantee immunity from South African variant. But the National Task Force insists any vaccination is better than none.
Pinaka-epektibong bakuna ay ang bakunang nandito na sa atin at ituturok na lang sa mga braso ng ating mga healthcare workers. Sa kasalukuyan, alam natin kulang na kulang ang supply, kaya kung ano man ang dumating dito, kung anumang brand yan, kailangan po talagang i-grab na natin ang opportunity na mabakunahan.
Despite the additional vaccines, the country is still far from reaching its vaccination target. In order to vaccinate 1.7 million health workers in the country, the government needs over 3 million doses of vaccines. The combined doses from Sinovac and AstraZeneca accounts for at least 1 million. This is just a third of the required doses to reach the government target. Vaccine Star Carlito Galvez earlier announced that the bulk of vaccines will arrive by third and fourth quarter of the year.
Robbie and Gretchen, earlier we were able to talk to Health Secretary Francisco Duque. He confirmed that he already received the recommendation from NITAG, but he still has to read the content of the recommendation so that he can give us the exact date of the rollout of AstraZeneca. We also asked Secretary Roque what to expect upon the arrival of AstraZeneca. He said it will take about 30 to 40 minutes to transfer the AstraZeneca vaccines from NAIA Terminal 3 here in Villamor Air Base. For now, we're still waiting for the arrival of President Rodrigo Duterte, so we're still on standby. Robbie, Gretchen?
Maraming salamat, Maricel Halili. Now, who are the ideal recipients of the Oxford-made shots, and can it really combat the South African variant? Let's discuss that with Dr. Ronjin Solante, the head of San Lazaro Hospital's Adult Infectious Diseases and Tropical Medicine Unit. Dr. Solante, welcome to The Big Story.
Hi, good evening.
Sir, linawin lang po muna natin. Itong AstraZeneca, what can it do or not do with regards to the South African variant?
Okay, so number one, this is a new vaccine that the Filipinos can have the opportunity to be protected. Second, the efficacy is also good across all ages in terms of prevention of symptomatic COVID. And I think if the issue now is the South African variant, I don't see any issue that it will hinder our rollout for this particular vaccine. Primarily given the reason that the South African variant is not yet the dominant variant that is here in the Philippines.
Okay, so mababa pa po yung incidence natin ng South African variant. That doesn't change the strategy. But now specifically, as the AstraZeneca vaccines arrive, what's the best way to roll this out, and which target sectors should this really be first for?
Okay, so since we are still in the priority population, which are the healthcare workers, no? The frontline healthcare workers. So this will still be the vaccine that can still be used for the healthcare workers, for those with comorbid conditions, and for those healthcare workers who maybe are already 60 years old and above.
Okay. Is there a difference there? Because there's that qualification, no? Elderly healthcare workers in particular, elderly frontliners. Is there a difference when it comes to that target population between Sinovac and AstraZeneca?
Well, in the Sinovac, EUA approval was not granted for 60 years old and above because of the lack of data in terms of the low number of population that was in the interim data for Sinovac. But for this AstraZeneca vaccine, in the UK and European countries, the approval was from 18 years old and above.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That was Dr. Ronjin Solante of the San Lazaro Hospital. Various researchers continue to debate about AstraZeneca's efficacy, but for the WHO, the Oxford vaccine provides enough protection against COVID-19. Tonight's big number, 63%. This is the efficacy rate of the AstraZeneca shot against symptomatic infections of COVID-19. That's according to the World Health Organization. Citing research, the WHO says the shot is still recommended for use even if COVID variants are present in a country. Back in December, the Lancet said the virus is 90% effective against symptomatic infections. AstraZeneca itself claims that its own vaccine is 100% effective against severe infections.
These are the other big stories tonight. Pasay City is open to imposing a citywide enhanced community quarantine. The OCTA Research Group warns the South African variant detected in the area may have already spread in nearby cities. A low level of unrest has been detected beneath Mount Pinatubo. Alert level 1 has been raised over the volcano. And samples taken from room 2209 in Makati City Hotel, where flight attendant Christine Dacera died, tested positive for drugs and semen. The PNP submits a motion to reopen the case. These big stories right after the break.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. The WHO downplayed claims that Astrazeneca could be less effective against COVID-19 South African variant. The WHO says it's better than zero protection. Greg Gregorio with the report.
The World Health Organization still believes that AstraZeneca's vaccine is effective against the South African variant of SARS-CoV-2. Citing a study in South Africa, the OCTA Research team earlier warned about the Oxford jab's reduced efficacy rate against mild and moderate cases of the B1351 variant.
We are happy to note that Philippines is receiving one of the largest consignment of Covax vaccines in this first initial consignment.
The health department seconded this, saying the sample size for the South African study was relatively small.
Ang sa atin naman, we like to always err on the side of caution. Pero hindi para sabihin na mawawalang bisa ang pagbabakuna natin.
In an interview with 1PHS sa Totoo Lang, Father Nicanor Austriaco of the OCTA Research team said this should not stop the Philippines from using the Oxford vaccines.
Any protection is better than no protection.
The government is expecting an additional 4.58 million AstraZeneca doses still through the Covax Facility starting May. The WHO is reminding the government to strictly follow the vaccine priority list to ensure unhampered supply.
If we cannot demonstrate that we are following this prioritization, unfortunately the Covax may have to consider other options where the impact of the vaccine rollout will be more useful.
The National Task Force Against COVID-19 vows to adhere to this. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Pasay City is open to imposing enhanced community quarantine, but even if it intensifies security in its borders, health experts warn the South African variant may have already leaked to nearby cities. JC Cosico explains.
Given the spike in COVID-19 infections and 4 recovered cases of the B1351 or South African variant in the city, Pasay is not taking chances. 210 households in 77 barangays are under lockdown. While restrictions may be eased in some 30 areas tomorrow, Barangay 1A3 will retain its ECQ status until March 17 with 34 infections.
Pamilya na. Meron kaming 3 pamilya sa ngayon. Meron nagtatrabaho sa ospital, meron nagtatrabaho dyan sa casino, sa terminal.
Security remains tight at the barangay's entry point. Delivery riders are required to scan a QR code for health declaration. But some had to leave their IDs as the online health check was inaccessible.
Nagugutom na customer namin eh. Nagantay na kasi kami dun sa sa pinag-orderan nila. Tas dito mag-aano pa kami ulit. Kung wala silang health certificate, mag-fill up sila ng health declaration para madali namin silang matrace.
But even as the city strengthens border security, the OCTA Research Group expressed its fear in One News to Chiefs that the variant may have leaked to nearby cities.
Although they're doing it in Pasay, some of it has already escaped Pasay and leaked over to some other LGUs. For example, the nearby barangays in Manila, Makati, and Taguig.
The local government is not averse to a citywide enhanced community quarantine, but the IATF has to be consulted.
Ang declaration po kasi ng citywide ECQ will involve IATF and CR also. Ang impact kasi ay nasa entire NCR dahil nandito sa amin ang airport, MRT, LR3, travel hub po kami.
In an interview with 1PH Totoo Lang, Father Nicanor Austriaco stressed the importance of arresting the spread of the new variant.
4 positive cases of B1351 in Pasay. That's still a small number. The concern is that that is only a portion of the real number.
As of Wednesday, Pasay City still has 543 active COVID-19 cases. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
Time for an express look at some of the day's big stories. Phivolcs has raised alert level 1 over Mount Pinatubo after the agency detected low-level unrest beneath the volcano. Phivolcs says this may be related to tectonic activities. However, no imminent eruption is expected. Experts say entry into the Pinatubo crater area should be done with extreme caution, if not avoided at all. The National Union of People's Lawyers is condemning the attack on one of its counsels, attorney Angelo Guillen, who was stabbed in the head by two unidentified men Wednesday. Guillen serves as counsel to various public interest and human rights cases, including one petition against the Anti-Terrorism Act. And President Rodrigo Duterte received his national ID on Wednesday, a month after registering himself on the Philippine Identification System, or PhilSys. Duterte signed the PhilSys Act in 2018 for government ID integration. The National Economic Development Authority, or NEDA, made the national ID registration one of its top priorities to aid future government cash subsidy distributions. Time for another quick break. When we return, samples taken from the room where flight attendant Christine Dacera died tested positive for drugs. And if Captain Re isn't enough, Smart is giving its users another option, Captain America. A look at the telco's new campaign after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. The NBI has summoned operatives involved in the shootout between the PNP and PIDEA. But the 11 QCPD personnel will have to return to the NBI tomorrow after they arrived without a lawyer. PIDEA agents, meanwhile, arrived this afternoon with their lawyers to give their statements to the NBI. The Bureau has also subpoenaed the owner of the white car that the PIDEA used during the misencounter. But the owner clarified that he already sold the car 7 years ago due to financial problems. Following that misencounter, the House has approved a bill that will give more teeth to the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. Our chief correspondent, Ed Lingao, joins us to talk more about this. Ed.
Hi, Robbie.
Ed, we were talking about this just yesterday, so the chiefs. This has a lot of controversial aspects to the point, in fact, that the original author is no longer an author. Tell us about that.
Well, okay. Well, of course, you're talking about the Congressman Rufy Biazon. He did back out because of disagreements over the provisions that provide for presumption of guilt on the part of those who are accused. Now, that flies against the principle of presumption of innocence based on Article 3, Section 14 of the Constitution. So that is a big issue for a lot of the people who are opposing this bill. Unfortunately, if you look at the numbers in Congress, clearly the bill had the majority, actually 2/3 almost, of the congressional vote. You had 188 congressmen who voted in favor of this bill. So obviously, the bill has a lot of support still in Congress. Versus what? 11 people who opposed.
Yeah, but how do they address that question? I mean, it's one very precise question. Isn't this unconstitutional?
Yes, that is true. That's Article 3, Section 14. However, the bill's author, Congressman Robert Ace Barbers, insists that the burden of proof is still or will still remain with the prosecution. However, and this is a big however, a burden of evidence is also being passed on to the accused. What that means basically is that the accused now also has to prove why, for example, he was present in a crime scene or why a drug transaction was taking place in his restaurant. So in other words, both the accuser and the accused are tasked with separately proving both of their claims, whereas before it was the accuser who was given just the burden. So presumably there is no diminution on the burden of the accuser, but there is clearly an added burden on the one who is now being accused. And Robbie, if I might just add, I do remember Congressman Barber's saying that there are other laws that have this kind of a presumption that have been accepted and that are in the law books. However, there's a big difference here because he was citing the libel law that is contained in the revised penal code. But that is a law that was passed in 1930 by the Commonwealth Parliament. So that predates both the 1935 Constitution and the 1987 Constitution. So now you're looking at a new law that is being passed under the present Constitution that precisely bars that kind of a provision.
Okay, well, in any case, Ed, sounds like another episode for the Chiefs. Maraming salamat, Ed Lingao. Samples taken from room 2209, where flight attendant Christine Dacera died, tested positive for drugs and semen. The results were released tonight ahead of the Makati RTC's scheduled resolution on the controversial case. The National Police says they will be filing a motion to reopen the case. Meanwhile, the camp of Gregorio de Guzman, Dacera's friend and one of the persons of interest, questioned the timing of the test results release. De Guzman's legal counsel, Mike Santiago, says the PNP already had the semen analysis results since February 9 and the drug results since February 11.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. From the Philippine Star, Malacanang assures Metro Manila residents that there will be enough water supply during the dry season and for the rest of the year. The government is fast-tracking its water security projects. This includes the controversial Kaliwa Dam and the Wawa Kalawis water supply projects, among others. Investment pledges increased by 156% within the first 2 months of the year. According to Business World, the Board of Investments approved a total of 121.9 billion pesos in investments in January and February. This despite a drop in commitments from foreign investors due to the pandemic. Despite the economic impact of the pandemic, telco company PLDT has recorded its highest full-year revenue in history. News 5 reports PLDT had a net income of 24.3 billion pesos in 2020. A big bulk of this come from data and broadband services, accounting for 73% of total revenues. Meanwhile, Manny V. Pangilinan, PLDT's chairman and CEO, hinted he may be retiring soon.
I want to prove to the world that I'm not the type who would cling to power. There's always a time to give up, and I think that time is soon. No?
From Captain Ree to Captain America, Chris Evans is Smart's newest brand ambassador. He is the face of the telco's Live Smarter for a Better World campaign. In the 2-minute ad, he posed this question.
Should we do good? Or should we do better?
Chris urges everybody to share more knowledge to build and show the ways to heal.
We have the power to create a better world, not just for ourselves, but for the good of all.
Smart's SVP Jane Basa says they're hoping that Evans may inspire more people to bring out the hero within them. President and CEO Al Panlilio says the campaign should make everybody realize that we are all interconnected and that our personal actions have a broader impact. Just ask Captain America.
How do I know this? Simple. Smart ako.
For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
Man, I'm starstruck. That's Captain America right there.
Klase. You know, but everybody's focused on, Chris Evans. Nawala na yung message. People, but the message is really good.
Yeah, living for a better world.
Oh, and let's start planning. Let's start being proactive in doing what we can do. Speaking of which, diba, we will continue to monitor the arrival of Astrazeneca. Keep this momentum of hope going.
One thing that I'm happy about is that people now have choices when it comes to the vaccine that they're going to take. So I hope they're able to roll it out quite soon. And that wraps up today's big story. My name is Gretchen Ho. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News. Good evening.